A meteor that lit up the night sky on Monday night still has a lot of folks in the Bay Area talking. Now, according to the American Meteor Society, 150 people reported seeing that fireball across Florida. Dozens of people flooded their social media timelines with a lot of pictures and a lot of videos of that. News Channel 8's Jamel Lene is joining us now live from the South Florida Museum in Bradenton, where scientists cannot stop talking about this, Jamel.
That's right. Good evening, Rod. You know what, scientists tell me that these types of meteors, they're very common. We just typically don't see them because it usually happens in the daytime or out over the ocean. But Monday night, we got lucky. Monday night, a meteor lit up the sky. Venice police officer Erin Mungavin saw it around 11:15.
I was driving actually west over to the island of Venice, and the interior of my car lit up really bright, and I looked up, and it looked like there was just a little firework actually just over to my left.
One of the officers captured the fireball on his dash cam.
It just was going down very slowly, and then I drove over the bridge. I saw another officer over there, so I went and spoke to him, Officer Ben Neff, and he said the same thing. He said he thought he was crazy.
Turns out they weren't the only ones seeing things. Dozens let their cameras roll, not knowing they would capture the meteor later. Jeff Rogers with the Bishop Planetarium in Bradenton said this one entered the atmosphere the size of a soccer ball near the Keys.
So this ball, it was probably stony, starts to burn up, and that gives you all the light show until it got to just off of Anna Maria Island, and then it was done.
And although it appeared close, we were never in any danger.
They can look like you can reach out and touch them, but those are 80 miles up. So very rarely do any of these meteors become meteorites. They don't usually make it down to the surface.
Little more than 2 weeks after Italian scientists warned climate change had put much of the country at risk of flooding, parts of the northwest have been inundated by heavy rain. Torrential downpours caused the Piedmont region's Tanaro River to burst its banks, prompting local officials to ask the government to declare a state of emergency. 2 days of continual rain has had a similar impact on Turin, where the Po River also flooded. The region of Liguria has been hit hard, and a red alert warning for bad weather issued. Meteorologists have warned of possible gale-force winds sweeping in over the coast. In Ventimiglia, near the border with France, 5 migrants were reportedly swept away after a swell hit the bridge they were living under. 4 were saved, but a Nigerian man is still missing, presumed drowned.
A 7.0 magnitude earthquake has struck the Pacific coast of Central America. The U.S. Geological Survey said the quake occurred around 120 kilometers off El Salvador at a depth of 33 kilometers. It rattled the region just as a hurricane barreled into nearby countries as well. There were no immediate reports of damage from Thursday's quake. The Central American country is situated along the major seismic zone known as the Pacific Ring of Fire. Over the last 2 weeks, earthquakes with magnitudes over 7.0 have hit Japan and New Zealand, both of which are located along the Ring of Fire.
Tokyo has been hit by its first November snowfall in 54 years. The Japanese capital does see snow at least once a year, but it usually falls in January or February and rarely accumulates for long. As much as 2 centimetres of snow was predicted for the centre of the city, according to the Japanese Meteorological Agency. When the last November flakes fell in the Japanese capital, John F. Kennedy was US president, and Bob Dylan had just released his debut album. It began as sleet around dawn, but turned to snow soon afterwards. It was sparked by an unusual cold front spreading over the Tokyo area that sent temperatures plunging to near 0 Celsius, that's 32 Fahrenheit.
Fueled by strong winds and dry weather, part of Haifa's skyline has been transformed by fire. The billowing smoke forcing the authorities to order tens of thousands of people to leave the city. Many homes have already been destroyed, with firefighters working to douse the flames to stop the fires spreading. Some houses, though, are beyond repair. The main highway between Israel's third biggest city and Tel Aviv was closed for some time, while teams tried to put out the flames as they gained ground on residential areas. The wildfires have struck an area close to Jerusalem, with some property already lost to the blaze. Homes have also been damaged in part of the occupied West Bank. Israeli authorities have raised the possibility that the fires may have been started deliberately, arresting 4 Israeli Palestinians, but a judge released them soon afterwards, citing a lack of evidence.
At the moment, we're investigating how the fires began. We strongly believe that the fires could have been started by individuals who fled the scenes. There are a number of reports that we've received, and therefore, at the moment, we're continuing to both put out the flames, deal with the major situation which is taking place in and around the city of Haifa.
Tinder dry conditions and a lack of rain for several months in some areas have fueled the fires. Several nations have already offered assistance, sending help from the skies to try to put out the fires. More strong winds, though, are predicted in the coming days, making their job even harder. Emma Hayward, Al Jazeera.
Now at 11, cannibalistic killings. We're seeing crime scene pictures from a horrific attack on a Florida couple. The Martin State Attorney's Office released the evidence in the case today, and the highly anticipated toxicology reports show the 19-year-old accused of the brutal murders of that Tequesta couple did not have flocka or bath salts in his system.
CBS 4's Carrie Codd spent the evening pouring through the evidence, and we need to warn you, you may find some of these images and information disturbing.
These are crime scene photos of suspected killer Austin Haroff after Martin County deputies finally subdued the man who displayed superhuman strength on August 15th. Haroff is accused of stabbing, beating, and taking bites out of the bodies of John and Michelle Stevens inside the garage of their home, and then resisting tasers and the efforts of deputies to stop him. This is a photo of the knife investigators believe Haroff used in the crime. It had hairs on it. We can show you these images taken by Martin County crime scene investigators after the killings as they trace the blood trail at the home. But the bulk of the crime scene photos released by prosecutors Wednesday are too grotesque for public view. We're learning that the FBI did not find flocka, bath salts, or cocaine in Haroff's system. They did find some marijuana and alcohol. We're also hearing from some of the emergency crews who responded to try and help the victims. One of them called Haroff the devil.
Bent down and quickly assessed seemed like me the devil.
That EMT said Haroff said a few things at the crime scene.
He was just coming up saying, F America, just kill me.
The documents released contain a police interview with Haroff's mother and sister after the crime. Haroff's mother said her son was acting strangely that day, and she played an audio recording of her son.
I become like almost immortal. I have to die. I have to die one day.
Haroff's sister said her brother had recently spoken about having superpowers, and he struggled with insomnia.
He was talking about being immortal, running lights, being in front of cars, testing his powers, being half an animal.
And some might argue as Haroff lay in handcuffs that night, that he was. Haroff is being held at the Martin County Jail facing 2 counts of first-degree murder. His attorney said in a statement Wednesday they did not think the FBI would find flocka or bath salts in his system. Instead, his attorneys believe Haroff suffers from severe mental illness, and they plan to address those issues in court.
Authorities in Germany have decided to kill 92,000 poultry after a series of high-risk H5N8 bird flu cases have been confirmed across the country. The strain has been repeatedly found in wild birds in recent days, and the authorities have tightened sanitary rules for farms. Several other European countries have found cases of the strain in the past few weeks, and some have ordered that poultry be kept indoors. Farmers are now worried that it will hit their profits just as the Christmas season begins.
The U.S. Navy says it has been the victim of a massive data breach exposing personal information, including Social Security numbers on more than 130,000 sailors. Rich Edson has that story from Washington. Rich, what happened?
Good morning, Greg. And even more Americans, you can add them to the list of those whose personal information was compromised from the government. In this case, the U.S. Navy points to one of its contractors, Hewlett Packard Enterprise Services. The Navy says the company has told employees a worker on a Navy contract had their laptop compromised and the names and Social Security numbers for more than 130,000 were accessed by, quote, unknown individuals. In a statement, a spokesperson writes, quote, the Navy takes this incident extremely seriously. This is a matter of trust for our sailors. We're in the early stages of investigating and are working quickly to identify and take care those affected by this breach. The Navy says there is no evidence to suggest misuse of that information, and its investigation continues. It is still unknown how that information was compromised, who may have it, or what they plan on doing with it. It's becoming commonplace for the U.S. government. The Navy says it is reviewing credit monitoring service options for those who were affected and their personal information was exposed, Greg.
You know, and Rich, it was just this week, wasn't it, that the Pentagon expressed the importance of cybersecurity.
Yeah, as the government continues dealing with cyber hacking of the Office of Personnel Management, the State Department, the Internal Revenue Service, the Pentagon noted a few days ago the importance of protecting its networks.
Secretary of Defense, who's been incredibly focused on the cyber threat facing this country. He's articulated a cyber strategy that he's detailed on multiple occasions. He is committed once again in terms of the top priority for our cyber strategy is to protect our own networks.
That was from Tuesday, the same day the Navy says it determined this information was compromised.
News out of Louisville, Kentucky. Police now confirm a gunman shot 6 people at a park during a youth football game. 2 people are now confirmed dead on this Thanksgiving. 2 dead. 4 others wounded, but expected to live. That's coming from a police official who just had a news conference. Here's a look at the park from above. It's known as the annual Juice Ball. It was happening at the time, a youth football event in the community. As of right now, police say they do not have anybody in custody. We are watching these live pictures from the scene. Several people we can see them crying as police try to calm them down. Again, this was a youth football game. Police now confirming 2 people shot dead, several others wounded in a park in Louisville. I believe it's known as Shawnee Park. I have a friend who lives in Louisville who tells me that the mayor of Louisville, his name is Greg Fisher, he was about 200 yards away from the actual gunshots. It appears, obviously, that he has not been harmed, but obviously he and other officials there in Louisville trying to get on top of the situation with a gunman still on the loose in Louisville, Kentucky this afternoon on Thanksgiving. We will bring you more updates as we get them.
Protecting the president-elect is going to cost New York City and its taxpayers a lot. Multiple city officials say the cost to safeguard Donald Trump and his family, who all live in New York City, at least $1 million every day. Trump currently resides in Trump Tower on 5th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, one of the most densely populated areas in New York City. A portion of 56th Street in between Madison and 5th Avenue has been closed off to traffic. Police barricades and heavily armed guards have become the new norm around Trump Tower. Despite Trump's upcoming move to Washington, D.C., New Yorkers will still be on the hook for paying for Trump's enormous city detail for the foreseeable future. Trump's wife Melania and their 10-year-old son Barron will continue to live at their home at Trump Tower, at least until the end of the school year. Trump has also indicated that he intends to be a commuter president, returning home to New York regularly, especially while Melania and Barron are still there. But it's not just them that New Yorkers are covering. All of Trump's adult kids and young grandchildren are entitled to receive Secret Service protection. Although New York City is no stranger to accommodating presidents and heads of states visiting from around the world, with the site of the United Nations located in Manhattan, Mayor Bill de Blasio said the ongoing daily expense and extreme measures being taken to protect the Trumps is unprecedented.
We are now 2 weeks past the election, but there are many people out there who have not given up on seeing Hillary Clinton in the White House. It has to do with the folks who have the real final say on who gets to be president. Senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel explains tonight from the White House.
Many Democrats are having difficulty letting go after Election Day, even though Hillary Clinton conceded the race.
We must accept this result and then look to the future.
Donald Trump is going to be our president.
Clinton supporters note she won the popular vote and she earned 232 electoral votes. Some suggest if Democrats could win over 38 more, Clinton could still be the 45th president. They point to the fact only 25 states in the District of Columbia require their electors to back the winner of the state's popular vote. Today, Jill Stein of the Green Party called for recounts in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest told Democrats yesterday it is time to move on.
The election's over. The debate about the consequences of that election has been resolved, and the president is following the will of the American people and fulfilling his institutional responsibility.
In fact, Earnest confirmed the president and president-elect have spoken by phone since their Oval Office meeting. Yet retiring California Senator Barbara Boxer and New York Congressman Charles Rangel have both proposed legislation to scrap the Electoral College system. And retiring Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid has called for hearings looking into the Electoral College.
It's unusual in such a short period of time in this young century. We've already had 2 elections where the loser got more votes than the winner. So I think it's something we should look at.
Yet a retired Ohio Democrat congressman and Fox News contributor says party leaders ought to blame themselves.
I think the Democratic Party lost its bearings years ago when it started to take money from corporations, corporate interests.
Last week, Clinton called on her supporters to fight for their values.
I ask you to stay engaged on every level. We need you. America needs you. Your energy, your ambition, your talent. That's how we get through this.
The White House view is come January 20th, there will be a new president. And a key responsibility in the remaining days is making sure Mr. Trump and his team are ready to assume power.
It can happen in a split second. A police stop turns into an ambush. Officers have been targeted several times this week. In Detroit, Wayne State University officer Colin Rose was shot Tuesday and died the next day. In Idaho, an officer was forced to react quickly when a suspect appeared suddenly. Here's Don Daler.
Officer Tom Woods was making a routine traffic stop when a man popped out of a trunk armed with a gun. Woods wrestled him to the ground. Lewiston's police chief Chris Ankeny says it could have ended badly.
There have been a lot of events in the past few months that have been quite horrific and have shown a propensity of violence toward police.
Over the past week, 6 officers were attacked in Michigan, Texas, Missouri, Florida, and Idaho. This year alone, 60 officers have been shot and killed, 20 in ambushes, a 67% increase over last year.
I've got an officer down in front of headquarters. I need EMS right now.
18 took place in Texas, where last Sunday, San Antonio detective Benjamin Marconi was shot in the head. The reasons are unclear. While some were retribution for shootings of blacks by white officers, most suspects in these police shootings were white men. Last July, Texas lawmakers proposed a law making it a hate crime to target police after 5 officers were murdered. Officer Ray Hunt.
It definitely tells people that we're not going to tolerate an individual killing somebody simply because of the uniform that they're wearing.
Last night, hundreds marched through the streets of San Antonio in support of their slain men in blue. And on Monday, people gathered in chilly St. Louis to honor an officer shot in the head during an ambush.
Thank you for being here.
Chief Sam Dotson.
To my officers, I say, it's a dangerous job. Go out and do it. Do it safely. Do it in pairs, but know that the community has your back.
That officer is expected to survive. Elaine, according to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, this year has seen the most targeted attacks on police in over 20 years.
A woman and her child have been killed at a refugee camp on the Greek island of Lesbos after an apparent gas explosion. 3 other children were seriously injured in the blast, which happened while the woman was cooking. It happened at the Moria camp, where these pictures were taken in October. Police say migrants again set fire to the camp after the explosion, burning a large part of it. The past few months have seen several incidents at refugee camps on Greek islands, where the number of migrants is more than double their capacity.
Bulgarian riot police deployed water cannon near hundreds of migrants who broke through a barrier in the country's largest refugee camp. The migrants threw stones and other objects at the security forces before staging a protest rally. They're angry about a decision by the local authority to put the camp in the southern town of Harmanli under quarantine after reports of a possible outbreak of skin disease.